All right, I am Pops, and yeah, Bass Reeves is a wrap. Season one is done, and I'm under the impression there's no season two. They're going to do more of an anthology thing and try to focus on other historical figures and try to raise some awareness of things that we don't know. And that would work well if it was very historically accurate, and I'm not real sure this show is really that historically accurate, but was it entertaining? Did they stick the landing? Those kinds of things. Let's talk about the show. So I don't know how much you've been watching the Sheridan verse show. I guess it's kind of in this. They've been back and forth on whether or not it's actually in the Yellowstone Sheridan verse kind of thing, 1883 and whatnot. But quick little recap with Billy Crow and David O as Bass Reeves. They're headed into Texas. They're going to be looking for Mister Showdown, Mister Sundown, right? Because they're on the move as he's pieced together clues that Esau, who's been played by Barry Pepper, who's had these horrific moments, these little flare-ups of extreme violence and things like that. He's the quote Mister Sundown who is making the black. The white elephant. Dennis Quaid's character is back as well. He's there right behind Bass. Is there? This guy is staggering through the town, completely drunk. And he goes to basically like just he's peeing on a wall, and then they basically put a bag over his head and drag him off. And again, Dennis Quaid's character is overtly violent, unnecessarily so. And we get our credits, and then it's an interrogation sequence where you have him just being, just, again, overtly violent, like but I'll say this: Dennis Quaid's performance is fantastic, is it not? Like Dennis Quaid's delivering. Like there's no. Oh, Dennis Quaid's not doing his part to try to make this show work because he certainly is. I mean, I think I could say the same kind of for Donald Sutherland, but his character wasn't really given anything interesting to do. Like he was really even like a watered down version of Snow from Hunger Games. It really wasn't anything particularly special or anything like that. Whereas Dennis Quaid, he gets moments like this. Look at the crazy look on his face. So I liked it. Anyway, so that progresses well, and as you would expect, Dennis Quaid's character is not going to follow the Bass Reeves sort of code of any sort of moral high ground, or anything like that. So that ends about as badly as you would expect before they head off following their clues. And we have to cut back to what is literally by far the worst part of this show. Like there is so little of interest in any of this sort of like backstory, this sort of like the it's sort of like trying to set up the fact that there was a civil rights movement right from the get-go post Civil War, and all of these figures that were able to be very vocal and boisterous. And I got to be honest, this is all very counter most of the history that we know and that we've listened to. Now, I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm just saying that this has been portrayed well into the right before the 60s, that this type of behavior, any of this type of behavior, was met with very extreme reactions from the hate. So and there's not been any coherent narrative or story or anything like a through line for us to really like this character. I don't think there's anything really particularly charismatic or interesting about the sister. I mean, she's fine. She's a nice matriarch character, but they haven't really given her. She doesn't really have a story arc, really. It's just she's pretty much the same as she was before, other than what having a little more sympathy towards her sister's story. I mean, maybe a little bit more. Anyway, she found herself a hot guy, and that's how that goes. Before we cut back to the story that matters, whereas Bass and Dennis Quaid's character and Billy are on the hunt, and there's guns are blazing a little bit, and we cut away again. We're back on all that nonsense, and then finally they're following the clues to go where Esau is, and they're met with these three guys, and Bass is being told he has to disarm. There's a comment about the one guy being like enormous. He's like built like the mountain from Game of Thrones or something. And then they cut back, and you realize that George and the wife have made their presence known, and there's a flashback sequence to when they were owned on their farm. So she's pregnant with the first child in this flashback sequence and basically gives birth, which is delivered by the sister, before the crazy mom comes in and basically takes the baby and says, make sure you're at work tomorrow. Yeah. So that's kind of what all of that is before we cut back to Bass confronting Esau. And there's this interesting dynamic of the dinosaur skeleton, and you end up with like a little bit of story arc here of how Esau is so rich, basically being a cattle farmer and all that. But again, all of this that's remotely interesting that we're really trying to wait for the tensions building and all that kind of stuff is always interrupted by this extremely uninteresting commentary on how bad they had it when they were property of the Reeves and how bad the Reeves people are and how she wants to have this utopian, dream of whatever. And then we cut back to Esau again. Again, the biggest thing with the entire show, and this episode really highlights it, is how bad the editing and pacing gets for all that, where you're trying to shoehorn in this other story that's, I got to be honest, it's such a watered down version of other things that have done better commentary on all of that. So it just never really works. I just think they should have really set up like there's such a start and stop with what the daughter had done, right? So then the haters came there, and she may have been the reason that they didn't attack them. I mean, it's just everything is so convoluted and unnecessary and uninteresting. So we do finally get this where they have some great dialogue and back and forth about being monsters, basically, and then you have we waste too much time here with the big reveal. The big reveal is Mister Sundown is not executed any of those prisoners. He's basically re-enslaved them. And they're trying to play that up as being more of a monster than what he was portrayed as. And I thought that was really kind of a very odd twist. Like, I mean, I get what you're going for. He was evil. But he was evil as Mister Sundown when he was executing them. So is he supposed to be more evil now that he's enslaving them again? I mean, I'm not trying to say he's not evil, because he is, but it was it's a weird twist to basically foment this extreme perspective on things that culminates with like a big shootout and fighting and all of that. And then poor Dennis Quaid's character, he wanders into an area where they had like a bear trap. And there was a quick little comment about that earlier on, but that's how all that plays out before you end up with these big shootouts and all the big fighting that culminates there. And that's kind of how things go and play out. Now, I don't want to get into the ending with you and that kind of thing. I think that's pretty much it, right? The show culminates with this big moment, this big showdown, how it's all going to resolve itself. What will Billy Crow do? And, kind of Bass kind of sending him back to go, here's this thing, go be with your girl. Like it was another loose end that was remotely a side story that we'd filled in for a couple episodes. And at the end, she's off camera. I don't even know the last time we've seen her. It's been at least 2 episodes. I don't know. So did it stick the landing? It did pretty much what I think I expected it to do, but it didn't do anything that puts it on the scale of the Yellowstone projects, right? Like it's not like it doesn't hold a candle to 1923 or 1883 or anything like that. That said, it also is significantly better than the Lioness project, which came out earlier this year, which was a complete debacle and probably the worst thing that has been done by any Sheridan-related project to date that I'm aware of. So this is sort of like in that Midland, and really the only positive in this is it's shot well and done well most of the time, and David O is fantastic as Bass Reeves. And overall, the negative is a little bit of like the wasted time and the bloat, but not nearly as bad as what we get from the Mouse House. So there you go. I'm going to give it sort of like a B-, maybe a C+. The episode itself kind of drugged down the overall score. Like I think it was in that sort of like B category of like, it's pretty good. Like it's a solid, 3 out of 5 stars, maybe a little bit more if you're into Westerns, things like that. It's a very solid show. It's okay. But just why was we're going to make Mister Sundown more evil by having him make them slaves rather than like I'm still sort of like kind of reeling from that's more, like the scale of evil for them in this. I don't know. It's such a strange thing for me. So you guys tell me what you guys think. Am I way off balance with that? Do you guys agree with my take or not? Love hearing from you so much. Take care, everybody. I am Pops.